Welcome to Literary Deep Dives and Discussions with me, A.L. Liskey, the author of the Unseen Operative series. Today I'm joined by our guest author, Ryan John Null.
Hello, thanks for having me.
Ryan is the author of the Flare Chronicles. I have read your first book, Into the Blaze, and you have a work in progress coming out pretty soon too, I hear.
Yes, so Into the Shadows is officially released. It is book 2 in the series. I've got my spicy romancy series I plan to launch this year. Vampire and werewolf novella being published in Australia. Book 3 for the series. And then a cover that'll be for a journal designed. The cover will be designed by a 6th grader. And then the journal will be written half by my mom from my mother's perspective. And then the other half by me as part of the main character in the Daniel in the series.
Now that sounds fascinating. So you have several things coming out soon.
Yep. So I plan on launching that. I have another dwarf and dragon book set in Norway. It's a novella series I'm going to launch too that I'm going to try to get to this year as well. But between events, and I'm also a nurse during the day, so I work at the hospital between a couple clinics, and I've got 3 boys, and we got dogs and chickens, and I'm going to try to do it all. But the dwarf and dragon one, I don't know.
Can be a lot, this is a question I usually ask towards the end, but since you do have all that much happening, how do you get to writing? When do you find time for this?
Well, normally I stay up to about midnight, 1, and then I'll get up between 5 and 6, depending of what clinic I got to go to. It's nice working in an office setting clinic because, I've got the lunch and I'm right there, so I'm pretty accessible for everything. But generally at night, and then my wife's a nurse as well. She works the weekend shift when we don't travel. So every Friday, Saturday, and Sunday night, I do a lot of book stuff and writing and things like that when she's at working. And my younger 2 boys are sleeping, and my oldest son, he works all the time. So he's generally not home on the weekend. He's a teenager.
How does your family feel about your books? I'm curious about that.
Well, the boys think it's pretty cool that, Dad writes dragon books, and they love the dragons and things like that. And they've gotten travel quite a bit last year, so they enjoy seeing new places. My wife is a little bit strained at times, me just really on the computer and working a lot. I've really kind of worked a lot of overtime and different jobs in the past where I wasn't home. I also have 10 years and a degree in IT, so my background's in IT, and that kept me away from home. And even when my kids were born, I had to go and help fix the plan and things like that. So she's kind of used to me being gone and here, but not here, I guess you'd say.
It's the family mostly supports it, and they've learned how to have their dynamics around that. I like that.
We kind of stay kind of busy, and I mean, I've got a big romance event in UK next year in May. I think it's in May, at the end of May, that I'm going to do kind of a UK launch tour on the romancy series, and then I'm working with a few other bookshops over there and some authors to kind of get an event together in March as well. I'll be traveling a little bit more overseas next year as well.
That's super exciting.
It is. It's humbling. I'm very humbled. People tend to like my series. I've heard really good reviews. People enjoy it. My goal is to write 300 books in the Flare Chronicles and the Spicy Romancy series. And I make my own maps too. I do my own custom maps and designs and things like that.
That's fantastic. I was going to ask about that because I saw that at the start of the book and I thought this was impressive. I don't do that because my series is based off the US and the US has a map, but it's very interesting to me to look into fantasy authors like yourself that take the time to really lay it out for the readers.
Thank you. I enjoy making maps. That one in the Flare Chronicles took about 80 hours, and then the Spicy Romancy, it's actually bigger. A lot more went into it, a little bit different dynamics and kind of things I wanted to do just to creativity, kind of expand my reach. That one took about 120 hours. I generally put as a newsletter exclusive, and I've always been fascinated with a really, immersive world. I grew up reading Dragonlance and Eragon and Harry Potter and all those cool things that have the maps and the universes and things like that. So
yeah, those are really great series. I've read quite a few of those as well. What is your process for creating these maps?
I tend to do it backwards. So generally, people start with the map and then go from there. The Flare Chronicles, I wrote the first book all through high school. I started writing the prequels in eighth grade by my eighth grade teacher, and I dedicate that series to her because she was the one that really said I was a writer. She pushed me towards it. You know, my dad's a tool and die maker. That's all. He knows how to build things and molds and machines, but he's not a writer. So that I kind of did that backwards, and I did the same thing with my Spicy Romancy. So the first book, I'll go back and kind of build the map from inside out, I guess you'd say, and kind of go from there. You know, just think of ideas, or generally when I do it, I will try to think of like myths and legends or something I can write, like a prequel or a short story, or, you know, something to make it interesting, fun, and overall, you know, aesthetically appeasing, of course.
So, did you have any prior experience making maps, or did you just kind of set yourself to do it one day?
No, I just set myself to do it one day. So I loved how Dragonlance had this massive immersive map, and I mean, I've got 80, maybe 90 books of that series alone, you know, and I loved how they started it off as just a campaign. So a simple like D&D campaign is how that, you know, it's 40 years old now. It started off that simple idea, and they made this huge map, and they've got all these races and stories and ages, and so I was like, I want to do something like that. You know, that would be cool. I mean, I did that. I still have my original map that I kind of hand drew and then taped two pieces together, you know, to make it back in high school. But that was my goal. And, you know, my future goal is I hope to collaborate more with authors and kind of do what they did. You know, they've got 60 authors in that world that they've collaborated with or written short stories or different ages and things like that.
Yeah, that sounds exciting. I've always been intrigued by collaborating with other authors. I don't know that I could honestly do that because of the way that I write, but you know, it is an intriguing idea. And then, kind of like you're saying, sometimes you just decide to do something, you put your mind to it, and it happens. That was my story with becoming a fiction writer. I've always been a nonfiction writer. I have a firm belief that whatever you want to do, if you put your mind to do it, it'll happen.
Amen to that. I agree. I've tried to read nonfiction. I just can't. I'm just not a nonfiction kind of guy. You know, I've always been a dragon kind of rider and flying high in the skies, I guess you'd say, with dragons. So, and magic. And I just love fantasy. I used to come home and crack open a book and read till like midnight, and then I got grounded from reading because I was just reading and not doing my homework. So, well, middle school, I would read 300 books a year is what I read through middle school.
So books have always been a huge part of your life then?
They have, yep. I remember one year for my birthday, all I won was books, and my dad thought I was absolutely crazy, but he took me to Barnes & Noble, and we got like 3 bags of books, and it was the best birthday present he could ever give me. So
I better hint my husband that that's what I want.
yeah, there you go.
Yeah, we do. You know, it's not just about source material. It's about, we need our own little adventure to get out of our heads, and sometimes it does contribute to writing. Do you have any books particularly or specifically that have contributed to your writing?
I definitely say Dragonlance, just because of the maps, and you know, the world is immersive. It's got different ages. I mean, they've really built a whole universe, and I'm building my universe now as I write prequels and things like that. And I'm finding out how challenging that is, because everything kind of has to align, you know, with the same thing. Like it's easier writing like books when it's kind of like 1 through 6, or you know, 6 through 12, but when you're writing prequels and you're writing short stories and journals, like everything, the timelines all have to match to build this huge, you know, massive universe. I mean, for me, that's amazing. I read a lot of Brian Jacques, I believe his name is. He's passed away, but he was the author that wrote Redwall. I thought that was amazing because, you know, he lived in this little old town, it was like a grapevine area in Italy, and he was 75, 80 years old when he published his first book. To me, that's just amazing. I mean, I don't know when I get that age if I'm going to be writing books, or if I'm going to have the mentality, you know, capacity just to do that at that age. And it was so successful that there's 15, maybe almost 20 of them now. I mean, I have half of them. They've been out for 20 years, but they're really really hard to find. Then I've always been a Lord of the Rings fan. Love the movies. Love The Hobbit.
Those are great. Yeah, books always have a way of influencing our writing. How do you keep track of all of these timelines? I believe it was along that, because while you're talking, I am kind of thinking about, that is something that I'm going through right now. I have a side novella coming off for anybody who pre-orders my second book, and it has to line so perfectly with this timeline that I have happening in the second book that I'm always back and forth, back and forth. But as you're saying, that even though I don't have a world necessarily that I'm building, I do have to stick to going back and forth between times, because that's kind of what my series does before the Third World War, during the Third World War, after the Third World War. And it is mind-wrenching. I don't think readers truly understand and appreciate fully how much work it is for authors to try to keep that continuity. But for yourself, how do you keep track of the continuity?
Generally, I have a master Excel sheet that I use for every series or universe I build, and that is kind of my go-to place. So I've got names, I've got description. If it's on the map, it's on the Excel sheet. If it's a trinket, it's on the Excel sheet. So that's generally how I reference it. Now, I also use Word documents, and I make a list of random names of cities or characters, or my journal. What I'm writing is, the prequel. Sorry, I've written the journal, but the prequel, because the prequel kind of lines up, it kind of does this between the journal and Into the Blaze. It leads up to that, but the journal does too. So it kind of meshes. So I've been going back and forth between the Word document, the Excel sheet, the journal, and then the prequel because it's all got to kind of coherently go together in timelines. But the Excel sheet has by far been the best thing that I do, because I also like putting quotes at every chapter in my books. Yeah, I've got 3 different magic systems for 3 different worlds. I've also have my own language. So kind of we're speaking English or Spanish, Latin, all those different languages. I made the same thing in my books. So I've got a common language that is kind of the shared, but then there's the elf language, there's the dwarf language, and then there's the ancient language, maybe 20 years down the line or whatever, but very few people speak it. And I've got 3 of those and 3 universes. That Excel sheet really helps to keep track of everything and the meanings and that kind of thing.
Yeah, keep it all in one place. How did you go about designing these languages? Did you do a lot of research?
Generally, what I like to do is put in a word and then Google or something else or a dictionary, and then I'll put the meaning of that word in a different language. There are 400 languages that you can translate words to. And then from there, I'll combine words or take off different syllables, things like that, to where it sounds completely ridiculous or looks ridiculous, but it's unique and original to there. A lot of my words are, you can look at the root of maybe Latin or Irish or Norway. The root kind of means the same, and then I've just added my own twist. But I do research quite a bit on my words, and generally it takes, I spend about 80 hours a week generally on my book stuff. So researching has helped, because when you're trying to build this universe or a new one, it's got to be different than everybody else, but it's got to be different than what you've already built too, you know what I mean?
It's interesting to me when I come across authors on occasion that they don't do research for their books. And to me, that's such a setback, because even though we are creating brand new things, there are so many things that people need to relate to and find relevancy, and language being a huge one. I've had readers ask me all the time if I speak French and Italian because it's in my book, and I only speak Spanish, Tagalog, and English. So I have to explain to them that I've taken a lot of time and research into learning the cultures, learning the language, learning the derivatives, and to be able to write that. It's so easily taken for granted with things like AI and Google Translate that readers are just oh, you just plug it in and then type it in your book. And no, authors put serious thought into this.
They do. A lot of hard work goes into that, because if you're reading say a Western, even though it's fantasy, there's some things that are Western, you can't take that away. Or you're reading a dragon book, Dragon Riders, or a college book, there's some things that are always going to be that way. Dwarves are going to be short or have a hairy beard or be blacksmith. Elves love trees. There's just kind of that, you can twist it a little bit and make it your own, but there's that common neutrality that every writer shares that is kind of the standard or norm, that if you don't, readers tend to pick that out really easily. They can spot it kind of right on, you know what I mean?
It's very, very true, yes. Looking into your story, because I have read The Blaze and I thought it was very interesting. I'm waiting to post a review about that once all this house business gets settle down. I'm curious because there are a lot of names in there and locations that have like biblical roots to them, like Esau and Galilee and Caesarea. And so I'm curious if religion influenced any of your writing.
I mean, I grew up in a religious family. So my dad I was born and raised Catholic. My mom was Adventist for a while. She still is now, but she went to different churches. So spiritually, that was the thing. On Sundays, you go to church, Sunday dinners, and you eat together. You go to grandma's house, and you just kind of have that family time that unfortunately the world gets kind of crazier. Those traditions haven't been passed on, to younger generation. I grew up very spiritually in that aspect. My whole family is very religious. My oldest son's going to school to become a Catholic in that as well. And he's talking about missionary work too. So it's kind of passed on to my kids and a lot of my brothers and sisters. So I've got 6 brothers and sisters, and some of them are named after biblical names. So mom was very into that. I didn't intend it to be that way, but I've always loved the biblical language as far as the unique names, even Jewish language. It's got a lot of biblical, really just deep history roots kind of that you can't take away. It wasn't really my intention, but after it got done, it really fit. And I think the names fit the characters well based upon the story and how kind of they play out, what they kind of reflect, I guess. The names reflect the characters. And if you look at the attributes or their traits, those names of those biblical names really relate to the characters that were in there. I think it worked out really well. I do go to church regularly. I wear my cross on here and I pray regularly. I've got a cross tattooed to my shoulder. So, we are a very spiritual family, and I think it really helped the writing in the sense. Honestly, the Spicer Mancy was the first thing that I did that was far left than anything I had written before. But people kept asking for it, so they wanted me to dive into that. So I just listened to the readers, and that's what I did. Another thing that I try to do is I do a lot of surveys for my book, and which you noticed, I give dedications to people that win those. So I'll say, hey, I'm looking for a name, this building or whatever, and then I'll pick 3 names, and then whoever gets the most vote, I'll pick a random winner. Their name gets in the dedication, then they get a free book. So that's how I've done it. It's just another way to give back. Now on my prequels, I am installing religion a little bit more in the sense that, I've got spoilers, everybody, but it will have like a cathedral. There will be its own religion I created, its own kind of like Pope, Bishop, that kind of thing. Just because when I went to UK last year, I was very fascinated about how the monasteries and the churches and the castles and just how that, and even Roman mythology and stuff, it really, it heavily relies on that stuff. So I thought, well, I've got a king and queen, and I might as well do the same in my books. So I'll just create my own religion. And that's been a challenge, but I enjoyed doing that.
Yeah, that is fantastic. Religion always has some way of really reaching into our works. It's a heavy part of my work, even though it's subtle. I do keep it subtle, but I do keep it there. But cathedrals, like as you're talking, I'm remembering the cathedrals we used to visit when I lived in Spain, and there was a couple in the Philippines as well that were fascinating to me. The differences across cultures. So it's quite interesting how experiences in our lives can influence our writing, but then also readers. I love that you have engagement with your readers. Why is that so important to you?
Well, I just want to give back. I grew up in a small town, and it may not be this way today. I know the world's a bit kind of hairy and crazy out there. I think 5. Yeah, we had 5 houses on this old dirt country road. It was in the middle of boonies. 20 minutes outside of town. I rode my bike to school one day, so I know, and I learned the lesson the hard way. Never do that again. And, it was just that community sense that everyone knew each other. You stopped for your neighbor, you helped them out. You knew your neighbors by name. You knew the people, you knew the kids, you knew the mom and dads. You could name probably every person in the church. And it was just that community spirit that I really grew up in, that I really cherish. And I see that a lot with readers. Indie authors are very good about that. The readers are good about that. And even local bookshops, libraries, they're very good about that. And I know we've got all these computers and laptops and technology. And that's great. I've got an IT background, so I get it. I also believe, there's something that you kind of miss when you don't look at the the stars at night and you stargaze, or you don't sit on a rocking chair like I did with my great grandma, for hours on end, just watching the farm, picking vegetables, having a garden every year, just the simple things. For me, building that community and building that old way of tradition, not only does it remind me of my great grandma that was very, very strict, a very old Catholic person, it also reminds me that, the world's a bit crazy. I know there's a lot of hate out there, a lot of violence, and it's just a hard place for a lot of folks out there. We're all in it together, at some point. And at the end of the day, we all want the same thing. We just want to be recognized, and we just want a fellowship and someone to hear us. Our voice wants to be heard, and what we do wants to be heard. We want to be recognized. Bringing that small town roots and spirituality in that small community is really important. And it's something that I try to do because, we got all this cool stuff, but if we don't remember where we came from and remember the simple things in life that no money can buy, then you're missing out on a whole life that you're just missing out. It's beautiful.
Yes, I completely agree. It always breaks my heart when I come across certain authors that are really just about the book sales and the numbers. And to me, it's like, my book means absolutely nothing if I'm not engaging with my readers. My whole message is about empowering my readers. If I'm not connecting with people, if I'm not building a community, it's absolutely pointless, which is also why I don't make money off my books. I donate it all. Having those connections, that is what keeps us as a human race happy and at peace. It's what resolves the violence, is what resolves the wars. So if we ever want these issues that arise so frequently to end, we have to have human connection. And I mean, I work a lot with humanitarian studies, just the arts and humanities in general, and the statistics of depression and isolation are just utterly astounding, and they just keep going up every year. And I truly believe that's because there's not enough connection being formed. So it's refreshing to come across fellow authors like you that are really engaged with building that community.
Thank you. I really try. I mean, it means a lot. Book sales are great, but it's not what I got into it. And I spent more money on books than I don't know, maybe I'll make back, but I don't know. I didn't get into it. It was the middle schooler that was just so excited to get a picture taken to see an author that never knew one before, and that book changed his life, that he was cheesing it from one end to the other. It was the sixth grader that's doing my cover, that creative outlet, I guess, that I didn't have when I was younger. You couldn't self-publish. You couldn't do a lot of things you can do now. 20 years is a long time. It's just the lives that's changed. And I see that, and I see the good thing, and, or the conversations we have, and then it turns to God, and it turns to spirituality, and just they see kind of the day after the darkness, and I've gone through a lot of hard things. I know people go through a lot of hard things. Just to see that joy and the happiness, for me, all I wanted to do was make a difference in this world and change a life. So if I can do that and my books do that, then hey, they're great books. You can battle dragons and stuff, but the main purpose is to make a difference. It's hard to find that in today's world. My eighth grade teacher was a very inspirational person to me. She passed away because of breast cancer, but without her, I wouldn't have even started writing. I was a eighth grader, so going into high school, writing's not fun. People kind of, give you a hard time. It's not the coolest thing in middle school and high school to do. For her to say, hey, you've got the talent, you should do this, and kind of guide me along the way and be there. I just really want to make her proud where she's looking down.
That's powerful. It only takes one person to, topple the domino that just makes the rest fall. And I love hearing from different authors how there is always that one person that believes in you, that makes the difference. And then now as an author, you are being that person for other folks and helping them to see that I can be something, I can make a difference. That's what this is all about. It's that powerful message of we all matter and we all have this power within us to do something great. I love it so much. So thank you for sharing that. Kind of take me back to that moment, like back in eighth grade when your teacher inspired you to start writing. What was going through your head and how has your journey just changed from that?
I remember it was eighth grade, beginning of the year. I had braces. Braces aren't cool in eighth grade. likes breaks 8th grade. She was like, all right, I'm going to give you a challenge. So you need to write something unique that is not copyrighted. You know, it had to be just a fresh idea. It can be anything, fantasy fiction, nonfiction, whatever, but just something unique. And I'm like, well, I read all these books about dragons and epic battles and knights and swords and, you know, elves. Why don't I just write my own? So I wrote the short story, and she approached me after the class, after I turned it in like a week or two later. And she was like, did you write this? I was like, yeah. Like, I didn't, it was all original. I didn't copyright it. It was 3 pages, you know, but I poured my heart and soul into it, and I really enjoyed it. And she was like, you've got this writing talent. You should continue. And I'm like, Miss Newton, that's not cool at all. You get made fun of. Like, we're not doing that in 8th grade. And she was like, no, you should really keep doing it. So kind of thought about it. I read a bunch of more books. And then I ended up writing a second prequel for Into the Blaze. She really enjoyed it. She says better than the first one, that I had the talent, I should keep going. So I ended up winning. Me and another student won like 100%. We were tied in the whole class for our story. And then as I was reading, I thought, you know, well, maybe. I mean, I'm reading Dragonlance, and this started from a D&D campaign. Like, they're just making stuff up in basements. A huge series and all these New York Times bestsellers. And I'm like, that would be kind of cool. And I did enjoy the universe, and I modeled Daniel and the character. He was actually my youngest brother I have, so I modeled him after him. I helped raise him, helped watch him grow to where he is now in his 20s. And then I dated a girl in high school named Trisha, so I modeled Trisha after her. And I just started writing. I just write whatever came to mind, and I drew this little hand map, you know, that was really nerdy and geeky, but it was pieced together and it worked. Told everyone I was going to be a writer, and you know, of course, I got mocked and laughed at, and my dad loved him to death, but he was all like, you know, you can't make a living off that. You got to get a job and go to college and all that good stuff that they say, which is okay. So I end up majoring in IT. I minored in business management and accounting and engineering. I did some engineering work as well. But then graduation night, me and my wife, we had went to school together since 8th grade and all high school, but we started dating graduation night. By the next year, we had our oldest son, and then we got married. And then from there, life kind of happened. I had to take care of kids. I had a wife, and be coming up on 2 years now being a published author. So 14 years I took a break. And then I just 2 years ago, I thought, well, why not? I mean, worst case scenario, people are going to reject it. But my wife loved it, and she doesn't like reading. She loves movies and stuff. So she was kind of hounding me for a long time, like, you should really try to publish this or do something. She was actually my first editor. So when I was working and my oldest son was little, she was going through the scribbles and editing and the mounds of manuscripts I had. And she was like, why not? I'm like, well, people's going to make fun of me. They won't like it. You know, it's not really good. And she's like, no, you should really try it. So I did it, and then people loved it. So I just, I've never been one to quit something. My dad always told me hard work paid off. So you should keep going no matter what. And that's what I did. It's been an interesting journey. I wish I knew more about it when I first went into it, because there was so much that I've learned over the years, and I'm still learning. Every day, every week, it seems like, oh, this is new. Or Amazon changes something, or Ingram changes something. You're like, oh, well, we got to learn a different way, It's a whole continuous learning process that never stops. Really, for me, not only seeing the kids and stuff and the lives, and like going to events, and these kids are saying, hey, my English teacher talks about you. Like, he's a big fan of yours. And I'm like, that is awesome, but I don't know this guy, but the kid is just so excited to meet me, and he's talking about how it changed his life, and he wants to be a writer and all this stuff. And I'm like, this is awesome. And giving back. And then when I won my 2 international awards, it's like, hey, like, my writing is good. So, I think as authors, we think our writing's not that great. It's just something we love doing, and we kind of beat ourselves up. But when you get that recognition, it's humbling, because it's like, okay, well, I'm not just the new kid off the block. You know what I mean? I'm not the new person, new band trying to get in there and trying to start off small. I've got this. And then really the third one was when I went and spoke to the 5th graders. Yeah, because she's 6th grade now. So 5th graders. the teacher had heard my name, and she wanted me to come in and speak about publishing and writing and dragons and all this cool stuff. And I went to the school at Fort Branch, which I went to Gibson Southern, so it's still part of the South Gibson area. And these kids, I mean, it was a room full library of these kids, and even the librarian was asking questions, and they're just so excited, and like their smiles, like for me, it was really humbling because I knew I did a good deed. And then, ironically, that summer I gave away about 200 books to students, and they did like reading marathons for libraries. They do. So I gave away about 200. The kids were so excited to have books, and it was really humbling for that. The sixth grader, her mom reached out and she was like, "Hey, I heard you're giving these books away, and my daughter, you talked to her, and she was a really huge fan of yours." And I remember speaking to that class, and she had raised her hand and said, "Hey, I've got ADHD and dyslexia. Can I be a writer?" And I'm like, who in the world would tell you that? Like, you can be anybody you want to be, like you can do it. And I'm like, nobody should tell you that. And so when I went to their house for the first time, ironically, her dad is a year older than me, and we went to high school together. And he talked about being a military guy in the Army, and like everyone made fun of him, saying they made fun of me writing and all that. But he was one of the few that was like, "Hey, you got this. Like, you're going to be a good writer and write your story and keep on going." And so like for me, it was full circle, you know what I mean? So it was like, man, God's great. Like, it was just a blessing because I didn't know it or expect it. You know what I mean? It was just really a huge humbling moment at that point.
No, that is absolutely incredible. It's also very inspirational. A lot of the authors that I talk to, particularly on Facebook and Instagram, they're struggling where you are obviously succeeding. So I'm quite sure they would want me to ask you, like, what was your process of becoming published, of networking, of getting yourself known?
Like I said, I've never been one to not quit, something I start. And my dad was very adamant about, if you do something, do it right. Like, even if I failed at it, but if I put 120% and I did it right, he was happy, no matter good or bad, or if I failed, he was good. I was good in his eyes. And I really believe that is the way to go. And I've really tried to do that. He was also very prominent because he was a single dad for a lot of his life. Most of my years growing up, he was a single dad. So, we struggled, and it was just him. So if he didn't do it, no one kind of else would. He had me and a new house and car and dogs and that kind of thing. So he was very adamant about, if you borrow something, give it back in the best condition possible. Leave it better than expected. So I've tried to carry that with me. I mean, it's one of the reasons that I do help, and I try to help more than I saw it, originally. And I'm only human, so I can only kind of do so much. And, I wish I had some more experience getting into this realm of publishing and business and thing, because I've been hurt and kind of swindled a couple times, and I've had the wrong avenue. I couldn't live myself if I just stopped, and my kids. I couldn't look my kids in the eye, and my wife, and all the friends and family, and just the dreamers out there that just want to be heard, the voices that, they're really trying, they just want to be known. If I said, well, guys, life got tough, I just kind of quit, I'm sorry. I mean, what makes me that, that really, I couldn't be that guy. So the first publisher was terrible. I learned about vanity presses, bad thing. Didn't know that was a thing. Learned the hard way on that. And I thought, I can either stay down or I can just keep on going, keep putting my book out there. And this story's good. I believe in the story. I believe in the inspiration and hope it brings. It's not the spicy stuff, what everybody's publishing and reading, but it's got value and people should read it. And if I got to hand it away or walk to every bookstore, I will do it if I have to. And so honestly, that's what I did. I just blasted every bookstore I could find, every library. I started joining author threads and things like that. Every opportunity I could, I took to speak on podcast interviews. I searched a lot, did a lot of research where to find those things. And then I also joined a writers guild. So that was one thing people said you should do. I'm like, okay, well, I didn't know about that. So I was the vice president of the Evansville Writers Guild last year. And then I'm the secretary this year because I'm just so busy that I can't dedicate as much much time as I could last year. And I've just really been determined to not stop no matter what, and you can kind of let life kick you down or you can keep rising. And I've got a phoenix rising. This was hand drawn. It's really cool, but it says the only journey is within. So this is kind of my daily reminder, and I got it to always look at it and say, hey, it's a personal journey. You can either kind of take what the bad stuff the world gives you, or you can smile and you can be happy and you can roll with it and make the best out of it. If you go to bed tired or sore, hey, if you did 120%, you're good. You did all you can do. Keep on going, And I really try to, even my boys now, I tell them that every day. Do your best. I'm happy, no matter what, you did your best. I've been really humbled and blessed because I've met so many good people and friends and, authors and children and youth and just illustrations, just all these people that I never knew existed, and I mean, I'm talking to people in Romania and South Korea and UK and Canada, and I'm like, I've never been there even. It's one of those things I always tell people, especially new writers, that, it's what you want in it. It's really what it boils down to. If you're looking to do it long term, or are you looking for something that is just kind of temporary, just a hobby? I want to write long term. I want to make a difference in the world and community long term is my goal. That's my goal, and every goal is different. Some people are like, well, I love writing, but I love my day job, or it's expensive and all these, I can't travel, or my age, or whatever the case. So it's really up to your personal, like, what do you want to do on it? To me, that's what I want to do. It's kind of exciting and humbling in a way, because the Writers Guild that we're part of, it's actually kind of grown so much, not necessarily in membership as much as we like, but I guess the word about it has grown so much that we're actually partnering with a private school, high school. I think they do middle school too, with the youth, and we're going to help the writers there, and the book clubs. They've got a couple book clubs, and then my publishing company I'm hoping to start next year. I've started my distribution company for authors to help authors see more visibility. I'm hoping to help and partner with them to publish their own anthology. And this is a high school, you know what I mean? Like, that's really cool.
That's massively cool. Wow.
So it's really been amazing to see kind of where God's put everything, where everything's going. 2 years ago, I would kind of laugh at you and be like, I'm not doing that. Like, that's not me. It's really been humbling. So that partnership's coming up in March. We're going to go talk to the students, and the director of it actually reached out. Our guild's got some good words and good feedback and reviews. And so we're growing in that sense in our, little southern Indiana part of the state.
That's fantastic. I'm going to have to touch base with you again on that. I was actually accepted into a master's for literacy. I wasn't able to do that, but it's always been a passion of mine to be able to spread literacy to students, especially in the secondary schools. So knowing that you're doing that, like, that does my heart a world of good. That is incredible, and it's so needed.
It is. And that's where, like, they had a lot of questions, and they're writing and building their worlds and fantasy people, and they, there's just not a lot of resources to kind of say, hey, XYZ is how to do it. And yeah, there's people out there that, well, they might help you. There's a lot of good people that help you. But there's also the, unfortunately, kind of dark side of publishing, that you put author and you brand yourself that, your people's going to want money or something from you, because that's just kind of how it is. There's a whole crew of marketing people out there that wants that, and there's nothing wrong with that, because you got to market your stuff. Just every company does market their business and items and that kind of niche. But if if you don't know it, I mean, it kind of is like a mousetrap. I've spoken to 2 middle schools and 1 high school now, and I've got done 1 guest reading in Florida. I'll be doing a book 2 guest reading in Books by the Bay. That'll be my 2nd year doing that. And I've done a bunch of workshops on map building and things like that. I've got a couple this year, and then I'm doing some more workshops and reading in UK next year. I've also got a reading at a fine arts center next Sunday for a guild up north, about 2 hours north of us. I'm really excited about the youth, though. That's going to be awesome to, just for them to be in high school or even middle school, because I think of some middle schoolers too, to say, hey, I'm a published author. And at 16, like, how cool is that? Like, not many 16-year-olds can actually say they're a published author. So it's going to be really great. I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, it is great. I've recently met a couple of indie authors that are high schoolers, and I've read their works, and they've just blown me away. It's the youth of rising generation. They have such power in them, and being able to unlock that is incredible. It's what the world needs. So I'm such a fan that you're doing that. It's just wonderful. What have you learned about yourself throughout this process of becoming an author and going about and spreading this to others?
The biggest struggle that I really dealt with, really even young, when I was young, was depression and anxiety and really self-doubt, I guess, self-worth, especially after the two kind of bad things I've had to go through and publishers and that, circumstances. I really have found more peace in myself, but I know like my writing is worth reading. It's good, and I don't say it braggingly. I say it very humbly, but I know I can write, and that's something. Even when I first published, I was kind of unsure. Like, are people gonna really want to read this? Like, I mean, you're put in front and center, and I mean, you got to be the man or the girl. I mean, it's your product, your creativity, and it leaves you a vulnerable kind of state, because it's your passion, your kind of little baby you kind of written, built, and all that thing. So it made me my confidence too. I was never a stage person. I hated stages, stage fright. I got it all the time, got red, embarrassed. And now it's like, I love doing podcasts. I love talking to youth. I love talking to people getting on stage and reading. And man, you look at the high school me and I would have went in a closet and hide somewhere, that just wasn't me. I kind of stayed out of the crowds and that kind of thing. I believe it's made me better, well-rounded altogether, being an author and going through those experiences and, giving back and being able to give kind of my story and inspiration and that hope, because people go through a lot and life's just not easy. The 16-year-old me would laugh now.
That is so true. It's weaknesses into strengths. That's what happens through these journeys when we really put faith and we just put out our vulnerable selves and keep pushing ourselves through it. And like, I'm the same as you. I was never into public speaking. I used to have selective mutism, which is a disorder where in certain locations you just can't talk. I would have never thought that I would be able to have a podcast, be an author, speak at church, do all the extracurricular academical things that I've done throughout the years. And it is incredible. And seeing that in you and other authors, that's really what it is. It turns weaknesses into strengths. And I believe that's how God is working in each of us. You are a very positive person, and I think that's fantastic. But I do have to ask, because you are so positive, how do you handle critique?
Well, I just learned to accept it and meet in the middle. And I used to be really hard on myself, and I'm still hard on myself. You ask my wife and people that know me, but I also believe that there is good and bad to every scenario. Everybody's got good and bad. It really, especially going through the last kind of 6 months or so, and then, reflecting upon the first publisher, the Vanity Press, and kind of the journey so far, it really honestly reminds me of Harry Potter more than anything, because, he's in there and he was like, what if I'm bad? Like, what if everyone's saying it's true? Everybody has that, good and bad. Everyone has that. You make your own choices. So, I can either let something upset me and ruin the whole day, or you just keep on smiling going forward, because honestly, it's probably not that big, and there's probably somebody out there that's had it worse than me. And I still have stress and anxiety, and I still worry, and there's beauty in the chaos. There's always that hope and joy. It really just makes me positive. I'm very spiritual too, and I see the grace. I see what the lives changed. I see what God's done me. I see what my faith has done, and it's just been a beautiful process at all. So, and I really try to keep that. If you let the negativity and you let the craziness in the world and the bad things that go on every day, you're going to be kind of miserable and sad. You're going to be upset every day, and it's not healthy too. Research shows it's not healthy. So, you just keep on going. Life's a crazy little mess. Sometimes the smallest moments, even if it's watching stars or small town communities, it brings out the best. Nothing bad can ever change or make a difference.
Exactly. If you change the way you look at things, the things you look at change. It's all about perspective, like you're saying. And, in the crime fiction world, which is where I write, is mystery thriller. It's all about seeing that other perspective, that there is beauty in the chaos, like you're saying. And even in the difficult things that don't have that textbook happy ending, there's still a way to have this peace and this joy in life, even when things kind of take you down and throw you around and it doesn't go the way that you think it should. It still goes a good way if you let it. So thank you so much for that perspective. Just for a final question, What is it that you most want your readers to take away from reading your books?
I don't know, because each book has its own theme. Into the Blaze is really the theme is, yes, there is a quest. Daniel sets off on a quest to find his heritage, his family, but he's soon kind of thrust into the blaze, the flames, No matter what, he meets Trisha and Brocktree, and they kind of form that companionship. But no matter what, through the whole thing, they're hopeful, they're laughing, hey, life's grand. I mean, I might got a scar on my back, but I'm still walking, you know what I mean? Like, life's still good. So that book is really that outtake on it. And like I said, every book's a little bit different theme. Like Into the Shadows is a very dark, it's kid-friendly dark book. There you go. That's the best word to describe it. But it makes you look at the perspective of darkness, because some people say, well, it's black and white. It's not really black and white. If you put yourself in that other person's shoes and you walk their shoes and you walk in their mile, your choices aren't always going to be the same. And sometimes it's so easy for many of us to say, well, that was a bad choice. I would have done it different. But if you really put yourself in that shoes and you had to walk into those shadows, would you do the same? Would you do something different? Because darkness is different in us all. It's a different perspective. It's not just what you visually see. It's what you feel inside, and it's what's around you and your environment. In that book, it really has that. Yeah, it is a darker book. Darker themes are kind of prominent, and it was a darker time in my life, but it does kind of get you in that different perspective of, let me walk a mile in that person's shoes and really see, well, what would I do? Well, maybe they did the best they could, or hey, they had to make some really tough choices, and this is kind of the best thing that they could do at the moment, because that's what I would do. There's still the hope and inspiration in it, but I mean, I'm not gonna lie, the companions get pretty beat up, and at the end of it, I mean, there's a bigger cliffhanger in the second one than there was the first one. So a lot of people that have read the second one, they're like, why I want the third one. So because it was like, you got to read the rest. And the third one does answer a lot of questions. It's, I think, 400 pages. It'll be the biggest out of the series. It ties up a lot of arcs, a lot of ends that people were asking about, and there's a lot more people die, bigger battles, that kind of thing. The way I named it was, my thinking was, you look at everything and then it's like, oh, and if you look at all three of them together, there's still that hope and inspiration, but it's like the sunshine's coming, so you go through these different walks in life that we all go through in our different aspects and journey. And then you get to a point where you look back and you're like, man, where I was and where I'm now, I'm like on top of the highest mountain, and there's a sunshine beaming that just feels, 200 degrees, because I've gone through all this and it's changed me as a whole, but it's also changed my perspective, and everything around me has changed. That one, I really want readers and people to feel that satisfaction, but not only for themselves and like reflection on themselves, but the characters, because that 16-year-old boy that started that, simple quest, simple minded quest just for one thing, is a man, but he's a completely different person than he was 2 books ago. And it's that transformation process, and they're all that way. They've lost friends, they've lost loved ones, they've got new ones, they've got new beasts, new magic, new languages, new history. It does expand a lot on Azerin that book 1, 2 hadn't even touched. And every book's a little bit different. Like my Spicier Fantasy series, it's more finding yourself, your identity, finding what do you want to do, and be true to yourself no matter what happens. I think the Vampire and Werewolf, that was my hardest, because I don't write dark fantasy. That was my first stab at it. And man, I hands down shout out to the people that write dark fantasy, because it's rough. It was a hard switch, switching to those two things, and that I really struggle with that, but I'm really happy with the way it turned out, and it's got some interesting themes, and it's very dark. It's probably one of the darkest that I've written that's not smutty.
Yeah, as authors, we can't really shy away from the difficult things. My book series in particular, I'm dealing with all sorts of things, from deep trauma, betrayal, abuse. Human trafficking does pop up in the third book, spoiler there. But if we don't present these oppositions and things, these difficulties that people go through, the actual human experience, we never understand the joy. We have to know the bad to know the good and the better. And it's really the hardship things that we go through that really make us who we are, like you're saying. So having readers be able to discover that is massive. And I found that that is a common goal across the board for most authors, is we want our readers to really take a look within themselves and discover something, to be changed by it, and to go out and change their lives. So it is refreshing to have those messages, as well as to have different messages throughout every book, so that there's always something new to improve on.
Thank you. Yes, it's one thing I loved about fantasy books and books in general, that I could literally open the book and teleport myself, and I could be anybody I wanted to be. I really, when I write, I try to put the characters relatable and make them where if you read it, you're there. I mean, you're not just the person on the outside reading it, even though it's all meant in writing, kind of like Tolkien was, but kind of neck and deep, waving a sword or crying on someone's shoulders or giving a hug or feeling your brother, you know what I mean? Or fishing or just something, but you're in that. And that's one thing I tend to stick with fantasy, because, you know, when I would read growing up, I mean, I would just open the book and it's like my whole body was transported. I really try to make that happen in my books and make the characters relatable, where there's at least one person through that whole book where you may be rooting for him, you may be like, oh yeah, I got hurt, whatever, you know, but you're like, that's my person, live or die, he's my person.
Yes, have that connection. It is powerful. I like that. Well, I look forward to continuing to read your books. For everybody who's viewing this, where can they find your books?
So currently, they can find it on Amazon. I'm working on Ingram. Ingram's so frustrating, but Barnes & Noble, I'm still working on the ebooks there. Google Play, Draft to Digital, and then you can buy it through me. I'm trying to figure out my website, how that's going to go. I am on all social media. I'm very active. I stay out on it frequently. I try to post every day. You know, the cool thing, I mean, this is one cool thing, I guess, about technology, is that you don't have to be physically at the same place if you want to buy a book or buy something. You know, with my new phone, it's newer. I've had it for a little bit, but you open your Stripe app, and I'm sure if you got Square, it'd be a Square app, and you enter some buttons and boom, tap to pay. Like, that stuff's cool, because that wasn't a thing 20 years ago too. You can really find it anywhere. But I do want to say thank you for having me, and thank you for the small businesses out there. Thank you for the authors, the artists, the people, the dreamers that are just trying to be a voice, be heard. And I do have a newsletter that I offer, one local author a month, and then 2 local businesses a month, just a free shout out. And I'm always available if anyone needs anything. I'm here. Your voices are heard, and kudos to everyone out there trying to make it.
Fantastic. Well, thank you. It has just been an honor to be able to talk to you on this podcast, and I really do appreciate all the things that you've shared. To all my viewers, please check out Ryan Knoll's books. Make sure that you check into his newsletter as well, and please subscribe to our channel so we can keep supporting indie authors. We'll see you next week.